We have not managed yet to transfer these to the web. We're getting closer. But we did finish the 5th chapter. So we're going to be on the 6th chapter. And if you open up Rabbeinu Yonah's commentary on the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avos is actually very interesting. It does not exist. Because there really is no 6th chapter to Pirkei Avos. We have theoretically wrapped up that the original Mishnah was 5 chapters, but there's 6 Shabbos between Pesach and Shavuos, and if you're going to do a chapter every week, you need something to do that last day other than play cards. So they created a set of brises. This whole set. So you'll see the very beginning. If you look on page 580, it says, right, Shana Chachamim, right, B'lashan HaMishnah. The Chachamim taught in the language of the Mishnah, Baruch, right, Shebachar Bahem Ub'Mishnasam. And blessed is the one who chooses them and chooses their teachings. So what we're going to do are brises. They're brises in the structure of Pirkei Avos, and there's no necessarily good reason why they didn't get included in the original version of Pirkei Avos, but there you have it. So these are Mishnayot, brises. Welcome. Brises taught in the flavor of Pirkei Avos. Okay. So we are on the first Mishnah of the 6th chapter, and it's not a short one. So Rebbe Meir says, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma zocher lidvarim harbe. Anyone who studies Torah for its own sake, right, merits many things. Right? So what are the reasons you can study Torah? You can study Torah because your teacher said you have to. You got a homework assignment, and if you don't study it, then you're going to get a bad grade. You can study Torah because your parents made you. Right? You can study Torah because if you study Torah, you'll become rich and famous. Right? If you think about the greatest people in our society, right, all the billionaires are Torah scholars. Right? That's the most respected occupation. Right? But his recommendation is, if in fact you have to recognize that the purpose of Torah is not just covering pages. Right? We've talked before the difference between Jewish learning and Greek learning. Right? Greek learning is, right, university learning is either I want to hear beautiful, crisp, fun ideas, or I'm trying to get a degree, or I'm trying to meet sorority girls, but it's driven towards this outside goal. That learning of Torah is driven towards an inside goal. That the learning of Torah, the purpose of it is its practical implementation, right, and the emotional and spiritual growth. Right? The reason you're learning Torah is not because someone made me, and it's not because I'll become rich and famous, but it's instructions for living. I am hoping to become a better guy. I'm hoping to be a better father, a better businessman, a better lawyer, right? A better creator of PowerPoints, but whatever it is, I feel that I can do better if my approach to life is a Torah approach to life. So he says, if that can be what you are, it's like I'm sitting down to learn because I want to learn. I'm not hoping that I'm going to get paid for it or anything else. I just want to do good for the sake of doing good. He says, then you'll get a lot of things. So here's what those things are. Furthermore, v'lo od, ela shekol ha'olam kulo kadai hulo. It says the entire world exists for your sake. Right? That it's sufficient. The world is actually worthwhile for your sake. That it is, if you think, it is, the Torah is the source of ethics for the world. It is the underlying source of values. When we talk about, Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning God created the universe. Right? We talk about the idea that God created according to a plan. That Torah theoretically exists physical reality. Right? That God sat down and created a system of ethics and a system of values and a system of ideals and says, here's how the universe, if I were to create a universe, I would want to have a concept of kindness. So how do I create a concept of kindness? Right? What's it take for there to be kindness? Just using it as an example. So we saw in an early Mishnah in the first parak, it says, God could have created the world so that all of your needs were met. Right? God could easily have created a picture where God creates a world, right? Air. Right? I understand that the air in LA is a little bit stinky and sometimes it's a little harsh, but for the most part, there's no cost for you to get air. It's just there, and whatever air you need, you just go, and you have, right? But that doesn't work with food, doesn't work with housing, doesn't work with a wife. Doesn't work with fast cars. Like most of the other thing, I mean, I guess theoretically is you can find a guy who left his keys, what. But for the most part, you can't just get a fast car. You got to work hard. It's not like air, right? God could have created a world that all of your needs were automatically met. Instead, God created a world with shortfall. God created a world where what you need is lacking, right? When you finish, I showed my daughters once, one of the most important brachos of all is, right, is the Borei Nefashos, right? After you eat anything, and you thank God for creating you with your lack, with the things that you're missing. And He creates the ability to fill those needs. So it says, what's the concept of kindness? Kindness is, I see you, and I recognize you as being a human being, and I recognize that you have needs, and I strive, I desire to help fill those. Right? You're my friend. I want your life to be good. And if I see something, if I can bend over and pick something up for you, if I can pour a drink for you, if I can help you get a job, if I can... The concept of kindness is I see your needs and I try to fulfill them. It's the fulfillment of a person's needs for someone else. It's not necessary. Right? God could have created a world where all your needs were already met. Why did He create a world where there was lack? Because He wants us to fill in and be other-centered. You hear it? So if you create the concept of kindness, and if we can sit down and have a discussion and recognize that the concept of a human being other-centered and seeing the pain or difficulty of another person is real, and empathizing with that difficulty and striving to fill it, if you recognize that that concept is real, now I've got to create a universe that has lack. Because if the world has no lack, then there's no room for kindness. So the idea is that God created the concept first. He creates the structure, the morality of Torah first, and then creates a universe that goes around it. That the Torah is the underlying philosophy. It's the underlying philosophical system. But that means if I've created a universe, I've created the concept of kindness, and I recognize the necessity of kindness and the value of kindness, and I've created a whole universe in order to have kindness in it. Think how stinky it would be if nobody in the world was willing to be kind. Right? God created a whole universe around the concept of kindness, and nobody is kind. It's an absolute failure of everything. Right? It says God created a system of mitzvot, a system of philosophical and moral and intellectual principles, and He created a universe to go around it. Right? 1 trillion stars in our galaxy alone, 1 trillion galaxies around, and a phenomenally complex system that was created in order to make kindness possible. Therefore, if you are the one guy on the planet who's doing Torah, who's doing kindness, who's doing whatever that mitzvah, whatever that philosophical concept, you're the guy who's implementing it, it is fitting that the whole universe should exist for the sake of you doing that. You're the focus. You're the pinnacle. I mean, hopefully there's, theoretically we're hoping that there's a guy in the next room doing good stuff too, and there's other people do. But if God created the universe in order to have kindness happen, the fact that you're willing to act in a way that's to be kind means you make the universe, you make the universe work, right? You justify the existence of the system, right? This whole document, that this is the box we're trying to get at. You're the guy filling in the box. It's got to happen, right? So he says, Shekol ha'olam kulo, all of it, kadai, hulo. It's all fitting that it should exist. Now, one other idea is this idea of kadai is the Torah philosophy is that everything in the world is kadai. Kadai, it's as if it's sufficient. Everything is good. Right? It's kadai. It's all fitting that it should be. Which again is now one of the hardest things. I'm doing this whole cancer nonsense. And in some ways the thing that's most amazing to me is people keep, repeatedly people say, they compliment me on my attitude. Right? Your attitude's amazing. Your attitude, it's like, and my attitude is simply, life's good. Right? It's a very simple attitude to it. Life is good. Thank God it's all good. And people are shocked to hear that's like, what do you mean it's all good? It's like, it's all bad. It's this, it's broken, it's correct. Right? It's all good. Right? The Torah approach to life is, it's good. It doesn't always go the way you thought it was going to be. It's not always easy. It's often painful. It's often a challenge. Right? You often sit down and look at where you're sitting and say, this is not where I thought I'd be sitting today. Right? But we say Kadai. It's adequate for our needs. It's sufficient for the divine purpose, right? Kadai, like Shaddai, the word is sufficient. That the world's good. The world's good. And it'll change everything, right? We talk about Sameach Behelko, right? A person who takes pleasure in his place in life. It comes from this idea of seeing the world as Kadai. Right? That I recognize that it's all good. Right? Would I have chosen it? No. You know, every once in a while, do I lie on the floor and say, I want to be done with this? Yes. But then you get a grip, you know, the chemo brain empties out a little bit, you get a grip on yourself again, and you say, you know what? It's all good. It's all good. So he says, the whole world, he sees it as Kadai. He sees the world as good, if you learn Torah Lishma, and it's fitting that the world should exist for him. Nikra, so here's what he's called. Rea, he's called friend, Ahuv, Ochev et hamakom, Ochev et habriot, Mesameach et hamakom, Mesameach et habriot. He's called a Rea, a friend. God sees you, if you're a person who's involved in Torah Lishma, just for the sake of Torah, God sees you as his friend. That you are a partner in the maintenance and the elevation of the world. That you are a person that God can trust and rely upon. And recognize when you do mitzvot, when you learn Torah, God is looking at you and he sees you as his friend. Not just as his son, and not just as his eved, and not just as his slave, and not just as his creation, but you're a friend. Right? You're a person that he can count on to move his world forward. Right? That you're called Ahuv, beloved. That your souls are tied up together. That God says Ahuv, right? That you're beloved to him. You love him and he loves you. Right? That's how do you show I follow your will. Right? How do you show your wife that you love her? You do what's good for her. Right? Your life, a chunk of your life is based on you want life to be good for her. Right? It's not always how do I get what's good for me. It's how do I do what's good for her. Right? God sees you as that person. He sees that you look at the world and say, what's good for my Creator? My heart is bound to his. I seek to give to him. I see good in him. And he sees you as his beloved. You're called a friend. You're called beloved. Ochev et hamakom and Ochev hadbriot. Right? That you are considered someone who loves hamakom, loves the omnipresent, and Ochev hadbriot, loves the created one. That your focus is on lifting those people who are around you and making God's presence in the world more concrete. Right? What's makom? You know, when a person is niftar, when a person passes away, right? The bracha we say, hamakom yinachem eschem b'toch sha'ar ve'etzion, right? Hamakom, makom literally is the word place. So people ask, when times are difficult, you say, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Or at least you say, where in the world is God? Where's God? Where was God? How could such a thing happen? Where was God? Right? So we flip it. We say God is hamakom. God is the place where it's not where in the world is God, it's where in God is the world. Right? That God is fixed and universal and omnipresent. He's in everything. Habriot, man is the exact opposite. Man is briot, man is created. Right? That man doesn't exist at all, and God scrapes together a little bit of mud and breathes life into it and creates, right, out of the concrete, material of the world, God creates this person. It says it's difficult to be the kind of person who loves both. The idea to have a heart that's big enough, a soul that's big enough that I love, right? I see good and I take pleasure in it. I'm a supporter and a defender of hamakom. I see God's presence everywhere. I see the big picture. But I also recognize that you're a creation of God. Right? We see there's a Mishnah again in the first parak that says Ochev habriot, right? Love created men. Right? Rav Noach says that love, Ochev, means to look at something, to see good in it, and to take pleasure in it. Those are the 3 steps of love. You have to look at it, to see it. You have to identify good, and you have to take pleasure. Right? Which means you can't be indifferent to it. I have to look at you. And I have to find something that's good about you. Right? I can like the shirt. Right? I can like the job. I can like the jokes, the personality, the behavior, but it means my obligation is to look at you and find something that's good in you. Right? You want to learn to love a friend or your child or a job or whatever. Find something that's good. And the second is you have to have an emotional, attached, involved response. You have to take pleasure in it. Right? It's one thing to say I can identify benefits, but it's got nothing to do with me. But Noah says that love is I see good in you and I take pleasure in it. So Ohev Habriot means it's easier for me to take pleasure in the fact that you're brilliant. When I meet you and you're brilliant, I see that as a good and I can take pleasure in it. You're funny. That's easy. You're nice, you're kind, you're gorgeous, you're rich, right? You buy good whiskey for me. Whatever it is, it's easy, right? Those things, it's easy to see that I can find good in you and take pleasure in it. Ohev Habriot means if you can't find anything else, at the very least, I see that you're a creation of God. Right? For whatever reason, God felt that you were necessary in His world today. He made you. He thinks that His world isn't going to work without you in it. I may not get it because you're annoying, right? You're troublesome. You're in my way, whatever it is, right? But God thinks you're necessary. The creator of the universe, right? I don't know which other world, but I see, so once I see you as a briot, you're a creation of God, then all of a sudden you're a reflection of Hamakom. God, who's everywhere, has some task that has to happen, some role that has to be fulfilled, and you're the guy. And I see good in that. And I take pleasure in it. I mean, that's hard. How many people, there's people that annoy you. Right? There's people who are, they're rough, or they're uncouth, or they're pushy, or they stand too close, or it's just not, you try to convince your kids, not everybody has to be your best friend. But you do have to recognize that God created them, and He thinks they're necessary, and so you have to find some good in them, and the hardest thing is you have to take pleasure in it. So a person whose life is involved in Torah, it says you will develop the ability to both see good in Hamakom, which means the God of the big picture, God of war and the God of death and the God of right, Himakom, this universal omnipresent God. I recognize God runs the world, but on a very focused level, I also recognize that you are His creature, and I love both. God calls you a friend. He calls you beloved. He says you love the omnipresent and you love mankind. Mesameach et hamakom, mesameach et habriot. It says you mesameach, simcha. So what's simcha? So we have multiple words for happiness, for joy, for pleasure. So two of them, for example, is this word simcha and the word oneg. Right? Shabbos is called an oneg. Right? Oneg Shabbos. Shabbos is not called a simcha. So what do we call a simcha? Name me a simcha. Simcha is a bris. A bar mitzvah is a simcha. I just using it idiomatically, right? A wedding is a simcha. A bar mitzvah is a simcha. A bris is a simcha. So think about these for a second. A bar mitzvah. A squeaky voiced 13-year-old kid chanting in Hebrew and Aramaic. Right? You're going to read chanting in Hebrew. Right? It's like, there's nothing particularly phenomenally wonderful about the event itself. It's no different than Shabbos last week or no Shabbos next week. What makes it a simcha? It's the joy you take in the potential that's represented by this boy entering into a Jewish community. Right? This boy is going from being a little kid to a guy who's taking responsibility in a Torah life. What's a bris? Right? Nobody's, it's like we're all my kid's having his ingrown toenail taken out. Let's all go to the doctor and have a party. Right? There's no joy in the surgery. The joy is here's a little human being that's being brought into the bris, into the covenant. It's the potential, the joy is in the potential. It's the same thing with a wedding. The difference in a Jewish wedding and a secular wedding is a Jewish wedding is about mesameach chasen v'kala. It's about simcha. It's about taking pleasure in the potential that's going to arise from these two people tying their lives together and becoming a family. It's not about the bar. Right? In the outside world, a wedding's a party. It's can I get drunk? Can I get in a fight? Can I dance? Can I find someone to take home? It's about the pleasure of the party. That's not what we're into. We're into the joy, right? Simcha is the joy of potential. Oneg is the pleasure in the moment. That's why we talk about Oneg Shabbos. Right? Shabbos is not supposed to be about potential. You're not supposed to be using Shabbos to prepare for Sunday. Shabbos is not an opportunity to get ready for something else in the future. Right? Shabbos is just about tainig, about taking pure pleasure in the moment. Olam Haba is the same thing. Olam Haba is not called a simcha. It's pleasure in the moment. So he says, Mesameach hamakom, mesameach habriot, that you give pleasure to God, but it's simcha, it's the pleasure and the potential. Just as an aside, nevuah only comes at a time of simcha. A prophet can only write prophecy when he's basimcha. Have you heard that idea before? So I ask you a question. How is it possible for Yirmiyahu to have written Yirmiyahu? How could he have written Eicha? How could you, right? If you can only have nevuah at a time of simcha, how can you sit at the gates of Jerusalem? How could you be prophesying and saying, listen, right? The bad guys are going to come and eat your children. Right? You're going to eat your own children. I mean, how is it possible for that to be a time basimcha? It's good. You hear the question? So it's not a time of oneg. There's no pleasure in the moment. Jeremiah was not a happy camper. But simcha and oneg are different things. He was not happy in the moment. But the pleasure and the potential of what will arise from it. Right? He sees that this is the seed or the nucleus of something that's good that will come of it. The Rebbeim talk about the fact, Hashem says, listen, I can either whack you or whack your car. Right? If I give you a choice, would you rather have me whack you or whack your car? You want me to whack my car. All right? I can either burn the temple or I can destroy the Jewish people. Yirmiyahu knew that this was bad, but it's also part of the fact that God loves us. That the joy he took wasn't in the moment of what was happening, but in the potential that out of this seed would arise everything that would come off into the eras of, to now and into the eras of Mashiach. That simcha is about the pleasure that you take in the potential. So when we say that you're mesameach hamakom, mesameach, right, a briot, he says, you take pleasure when you see someone take the gifts that you've given them and they convert those gifts into their proper use and they use them well and they lift them, right? God, remember, he designed the universe according to a plan and created it to implement it. When you're a person who's living Torah Lishma, God looks into his universe and he sees that there's a seed, there's a human being who's taking the physical and converting it to the spiritual. There's a person who's living a life in a proper way. There's a person who's a Torah person and lifting the universe. God sees the potential that rises from that. The conversion of the physical into this uplifted spiritual. And that he takes pleasure in. Right? That God is not indifferent to your activity in the world. When you do good, God takes pleasure. That the joys of the Spirit, right? The joys of the neshama, the joys of meaningful activity, the joys of mitzvot. Those are the things that are most eternal, that are longest lasting. The physical pleasures are fleeting. Right? You want to give pleasure and joy to other people. So, I give you a back rub. That lasts 2 minutes. Right? I can give you an idea on how to be a father that changes how you deal with your kids forever. I can show you, and I can help turn you into a moral person. I can uplift you. I can teach you. That's forever, because it's your soul. It's permanent. So a person who's living and teaching and learning Torah Lishma and touching other people, right? The pleasure you're giving, the joy that Rav Noach, that our teachers have given us by giving us a pathway to having an elevated life, that's eternal. That's mesameach habriot. It's true joy to a person, because I'm giving you guidance. We talk about, we daven. The first thing we daven for is clarity. Please God, let me not be nuts. Right? If you can give a person clarity, and they get a handle on it, they really have it. It's a totally different life. You're a totally different person. That's mesameach habriot. Right? I'm not just letting you drive my car. I'm giving you something that's eternal. Umovashto onava v'yira, that he clothes him with humility and with reverence. So, levush means to clothe with an ordinary garment. It means to clothe in a way that's ongoing and regular and permanent, that's worn as a matter of course. It's not a dress-up. Right? When it says he's levush, that this becomes who you are. You become a person whose whole demeanor, what you're wrapped in is humility and reverence, that they're not a pose, that they become an integral part of your makeup, right? That a nava is the opposite of conceit. That anava, humility, is not the same thing as meekness. We'll see this when we get into the 48 ways, a couple of Mishnayot farther. So what is anava? What is it to be humble? So in English, in Western society, we think of humility as meekness. Right? But Moshe Rabbeinu gets up and says, I'm the most humble guy ever. One, how can you say that? And two, here's a guy who's, kicking Paro from one side of the Nile to the other. How do you call that anava? Right? Conceit is when I take undue pride and value myself and puff myself up over stuff that I have nothing to do with. Stuff that isn't me. Stuff that's, guys who are stuck up over their wealth that their parents left to them. Right? A person who's stuck up over his looks that his genetics gave to him. People who take the gifts that are given to them and they think of themselves as bigger and more important. It's all me. Right? Anava is a clarity and a recognition of who exactly you really are. Moshe knew he was an Eved Hashem, but he also knew he was the guy whose job it was to kick Paro from one, up and down the delta. And he did what he had to do, but he was totally clear on who he was and what he was. There was no conceit. There was no braggadocio. There was no inflation, but there's also no self-abnegation. It's not, you're not lying to yourself or lying to other people and, with some sort of false, self-deprecation. I am what I am. I'm totally clear on who I am, right? And that, at least, Rav Noah talks about it in the 48 ways, that's the true charisma. When you meet a person who's absolutely clear on who they are, right? No games, no gimmicks, right? They're not trying to inflate themselves up to be something bigger, but they're not hiding, what they aren't capable of, right? You're the best hitter, you're the best hitter. You don't have to go out and brag about it, just hit the ball. Right? If you're the best, whatever it is, right, don't brag about it. Just, do it and do it right. People will know that you're the best, you are what you are. Right? Yira is also from clarity. It's yira is reverence, it's fear, but it's fear that comes from seeing the word yiroeh, to see. That I have absolute clarity on who God is. I'm afraid because I recognize the consequences. I recognize the reality. So I see who I am, I recognize what my role is, and I recognize what God's role is. That's anava and yira. I understand the roles that we're here to live. And it's milvashto. It's just your normal garment. There's no shtick, no gimmicks, no games. Right? I have a friend who, before he was married, he was dating. And this, the girl he was dating wanted to understand, who are you really underneath all of this? Right? What are you hiding? And he said, listen, I'm not deep. I'm not deep. I am what I am. If I think it, I say it. If I say it, I think it. It's this is what I am. Right? There's no secret agenda. There's no, right? There's no hidden great torment. There's no great... This is what I am. I'm a simple Pashat guy. That's to be milvashta, right? To be clothed in yira and anava. I recognize who I am and what my role is, and I recognize who God is and what His role. I'm just clear, and it's just simple. You meet me, you know who I am. There's no gimmicks. I'm not pretending to be. I'm not holding myself out as anything else. I'm just me. Umekasharto l'chayot tzadik chassid yashar v'ne'eman. Kashar. You're made fit. You are prepared to be. Right? Why are we doing all this? We're learning to prepare you for something. We're going to convert you, build you, shape you, construct you into something. I told you this is a big Mishnah. Right? It's 14 Mishnahs jammed into one. He says you're not going to magically become any of these things. It's a guy who invests his life in Torah is set up and structured and training to become. Right? You are building yourself into a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a person who does the right thing and lives within the law. Right? That's a tzaddik. I do what's right. I'm supposed to give, I give. I'm supposed to take, I take. If I have to sit, I sit, stand, I stand. Whatever I'm supposed to do, I do. A chassid is a person who always strives to go beyond the letter of the law. He tries to understand what's the underlying philosophical principle. What's God trying to get at here? And I may only have to go 8 steps, but I'm going to go 10. I understand what He's trying to turn me into, and I'm going to go a little farther. that there's many places where God will only demand that you go so far. It's unreasonable to demand that you go farther, but that doesn't mean you can't go farther. Right? There's things you don't have to do in the way of generosity. God's not going to command that you do. Right? But once I understand what God wants me to do is to be kind, right? There's some people whose hearts are big enough to go beyond and do more. But it's unworkable to tell everybody that they have to do. And to tell everybody you have to be, beyond the reasonable measure, it's not. And in fact, there's no one who's beyond a reasonable measure in everything. A guy who may be a chassid beyond the measure in giving may not be able to be beyond the measure in tefillah, or beyond the measure in learning, or beyond the measure in tzedakah, or beyond the measure in cooking, or beyond the measure in hosting, right? Find an aspect of life that you can be a chassid, right? Be a tzaddik, but find some place in your life that you can be a chassid, that you can focus on and really be good. If you're a teacher, teach. If you're a singer, sing. If you're, they started an organization in the Shomer thing where these guys, they walk people home on Shabbos, right? I may not be the biggest, ball tzedakah, but hey, I can walk someone home from a Shabbos dinner and keep them safe. It's a contribution to life, right? I may not be the biggest Talmid Chacham, but I can learn CPR and keep a little radio thing with me and know that when they call, I'm going to go and, I'll be the first guy there. There's lots of room, right? I bake challah, or whatever it is. Find something that you can say, here's what God's trying to train me at, and go and do more. That's a chassid. A yashar. So a yashar is straight. Right? Ezu derech yashar sheyarbu lo ha'adam. What's the straight path that a person should choose for himself? Right? This is the beginning of the second parak. God doesn't say what's the stringentest path. He says what's the ezu derech yashar? What's the straight path? It says ultimately, what do we want? We want you to be an upright person. To be no gimmicks, no games, not crooked, not twisted, not trying to figure out the angle. So you think of the words in English, right? They're all about bending. I'm going to bend the rules. I'm looking for an angle. He's a little bit twisted. He's a little bit crooked, right? No, he's a straight shooter. He's a straightforward guy. He's upright, right? Yashar. That you want to learn the values and the spirit and use it as a gyroscope to stay on course. That a yashar is I'm just simple and straightforward. I just want to do the right thing. No games. And a Naaman is a trustworthy person. Ultimately, it's someone you can rely upon. He won't fail you. Right? If you count on him, he'll do what he needs to do. You can give him a mission, it'll get done. Right? That's what we're learning this for. Learning Torah prepares you to be a guy who does the right thing. It prepares you to be a guy who wants to go beyond. It prepares you to be a guy who's just straightforward and honest. It prepares you to be a guy that we can count on. Right? That's what we're building. Merchakto min hachet umerkaravto lidei zchus. It keeps you far from sin and brings you close to merit. Right? It's a fence. It's a protective device. Right? A guy who's investing his life, temptation starts in the heart and it starts in the mind. It doesn't start with your body. It doesn't start with actions. It starts with, it's easy for me to think of bad things. It's easy for me to think of stealing and corruption, right? It says, you know what? A person who spends his life doing his best to be these other things, right? Learning Torah, it says God gives you a gift. He keeps that temptation farther away from you. It's there, but it doesn't get as close to you, right? And he brings you closer to opportunities for zchus, for merit. Right? The chances, you'll look, you pay attention, you'll find there's regularly opportunities for you to do good. They just, a guy who's living his life trying to do the right thing, the chances to do the right thing show up. Right? Very few people will go to the Rav and ask him if he wants to be involved in their scheme to defraud the bank. Because he's not going to say yes. So those temptations don't even come to him. But a person who's thinking they know someone who needs help, and they think he's the kind of guy who can help them, they're going to ask. The opportunity to do good comes to you. It's simple. People approach where they think they're going to be receptive. Right? If you're a straightforward guy, people are not going to ask you to be corrupt. But they are going to ask you to be generous. V'nehanin mimenu etza Tushia, Bina, Ugavura. People will come to you and they will enjoy benefit from you. Now, we've all talked about the gifts you get to yourself, but the people who live around you will enjoy benefit from you. You will become a valued member of society. You will be the kind of person that people want counsel, Eitzah, advice in social, political, familial matters. Right? If people see that you're really a solid Torah guy, they're going to ask you questions about their kids, about their business, about their wife, about, right? And, I'm an imposter, but I regularly get questions from people, it's like, right? What would you do here? It's like, well, I don't know, but Pirkei Avos, I don't give practical advice, ask a Rav. That's the nice thing of being not a Rav, is I can always say, I don't know, ask a Rav. But it's Eitzah. People want, right? You also have to be careful because you're messing in people's lives. But people will come to you for Eitzah. It says, Tushia is sound wisdom. It's that learning Torah sharpens the mind. If you have really a sense of values, of what's right and what's wrong, what God expects of you, what He doesn't expect of you, right? That we saw before, that everything comes of it, right? Dig and delve in it because everything is in it, right? My kids tease me because everything I say comes out to be Pirkei Avos. Right? I'm doing a sales call and it's a Pirkei Avos, and I give over a Mishnah. Doing a life insurance, explaining life insurance, and it comes out as a piece of Pirkei Avos. We're standing on third base and we're trying to talk about baseball, and it comes out as Pirkei Avos. That if you're learning Torah, all of a sudden, right, you have the ability, you get a better grasp on the practical course to take, because in many cases, what's straight and what's not, right? That you have the ability to reason, right? Bina, the ability to deduce correct conclusions from the information that you know. Understanding comes to you. And Gevura is the ability to act, to make a decision and act upon it. We saw the very first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Chave Masunim B'din, be deliberate in judgment. Right? Most people's lives are just a drift fest. They just kind of wander from place to place without ever stopping to think about anything. Right? The old Rush song says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Right? If you let, the random forces of nature drive you places, you still made a choice. You just made a choice to let randomness get you there. Right? You're not the one deciding. It's like, did I invest it? Your world falls apart, and it's not you taking yourself there. Ve'notenet lo malchus u'memshala v'hikur din, that you will have sovereignty and dominion and discerning judgment. So there's different ways to read this, right? Malchus is legitimate authority. Memshala is kind of provisional authority. Right, practical ability to boss people around, boss yourself around. One of the versions that I saw is that really this idea of sovereignty and dominion is that you have it over yourself, over physicality. That you start to learn, you gain control. Right, that over your own soul, your own desires, that a person who's got malchus is a person who has the ability to control himself. Or you can read it, there's commentaries that go both ways. That you do become a powerful person. Right? That in any society, with the society of the blind, the one-eyed guy is king. Right? If you're the only guy walking around with any sort of intelligence and clarity and morality, and right, people will defer to you. People will listen to you. It creates a level of leadership, right? Because you're a good guy. You're not, they trust you to tell them what's really true, right? And they'll depend upon you. Umaglin lo raze Torah, and all of a sudden you'll see that the secrets of Torah start to reveal themselves to you. Right? That your really mysteries come to you. V'nasa k'mayin hamiskaber v'kanahar she'enu posek. Right? That you're like a river. Right? That you become creative. You're a fountain that flows. You're a river that flows. He says all these gifts. He's now talking about your learning. That if you are the kind of person who spends his life looking and working and delving and living in Torah, says God will open up to you. And you'll have clarity. Right? And you'll see Torah. And you'll see in every aspect of your life, right, that all of a sudden answers come to you. And it's easier to deal with whatever you have to deal with, whether it's health or business or work or whatever, when you're trying to figure out, what do I do here? And Torah answers come to you. Right? That God opens his flow to you. It says that you become a tsunua, a modest person. Right? Hu tsunua, erech ruach, a person who's forbearing, long-suffering. I can put up with stuff because I understand truth. Right? No gimmicks, no games. I understand, you know what? I can put up with it. And in the end, he says, umocha et elbona. Umagdalato, umarmonato, al kol hamaisi. The Torah makes you great. It exalts you and it lifts you above all things. It says, what is it? Right? We saw one before that says, there's no greater thing to measure yourself against. It says, how do you measure yourself? Do you measure yourself based on your car? On your tie, on your job, on your title, on your money? How do you decide? You guys are babies. Not really, but it's all of a sudden you start to figure out, like, how do you measure whether you've been successful in your life? Right? You're not just getting started anymore. At a certain point in your life, it's like, did I do good? Did I not do good? It's like, all right, so I'm not a billionaire. Every time I look up Forbes to see myself in the billionaires list, I'm not there. So I'm a failure or am I not a failure? Right? Every time I look at the list of, major Rosh Yeshiva, I'm not there either. Right? I'm not on the list of, right? Did you make it or did you not make it? What's the measure that you measure greatness by? How do you determine whether you had a good life or not? Right? You're going to find yourself at 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. You're going to have to ask yourself the question, did I have a good life? Did I accomplish? So you may not end up with the best, biggest, greatest, fanciest startup. You may not end up as, a general or a lieutenant colonel. It may be that, they stop using your spreadsheet and your PowerPoint. Right? You don't know what you're going to be. Right? I built a business, I killed a business. I built another business, I killed another business. It's like, I sometimes look at it and I say, professionally I haven't done everything I thought I would do. But when I stop back and say, how am I doing about, talking to a wife and raising kids and, teaching ideas, right? Or better, at least thinking ideas. It says if you invest your life in Torah and your standard is, am I striving to be good? Am I striving to be connected? Am I striving to lift other people? He says that's a measure. And that's a measure of greatness. Right? That the greatest people of the generation are not necessarily the people that you see. Not the people you would think they are. Right? But a person who invests in his life and learns Torah Lishma and lives Torah Lishma, I'm not looking to get anything out of it. I just want to grow. He promises that not only will you grow, but in the end, God will make you great. And He'll exalt you. And you may still look like, a little guy living in an apartment or a house in Pico Robertson. But a guy who's invested his life in learning values and living values, God says, you're great. On the neshama scale, you're great. So that's our Mishnah.